One of the things that people don't understand is, now I don't consider myself a follower of David Duke. I'm a person that is informed about things by David Duke's news sources, okay? And I make up my own opinions. I don't agree with David Duke on a lot of things, but what I want to be sure that people understand, the reason and the primary reason that Donald Trump won in 2016 was his appeal to young Americans, primarily young white Americans, that are fed up with being crippled by affirmative action and other institutionalized racism in the government against young white men, okay? That is the primary reason that Donald Trump won. It's because he appealed to that voting bloc. I was always wary of Trump because I'm old. I'm not young, like a lot of the people that voted for him. Now, that being said, I did campaign. I went to Lancaster, went door to door to get Amish people to vote for Donald Trump. I wanted Donald Trump to win, and I wanted Donald Trump to win, I don't want to say bad, but I wanted somebody that would implement some of the reforms that he talked about, that he then not only didn't implement these reforms, he implemented cardinal opposites, such as the First Step Act, such as extending the stay of Haitians in the United States. He did a lot of things, such as trying to create communist Chinese-style special economic zones for Black Americans and only for Black Americans at the expense of the average American taxpayer, or and upon that, he promised that if he was reelected, he would implement for Black Americans a platinum plan, which was essentially a gigantic wealth redistribution racket to give Black Americans everyone else's money. So let's continue here. And I want people to understand that, yes, the primary reason that Donald Trump did win was the support of people like Richard Spencer, Ramsey Paul, David Duke, and other conservative-type people that were posing, Jared Taylor, and conservative-type people that were posing as pro-white, but later we found out otherwise. People that I knew because I notice things that other people don't notice. I'm one of those noticers. People that are in the know what I mean about being a noticer, okay? And the thing is, some of the people they weren't white. They were the kind of people that say fellow white people, okay? I'll just put it that way. I was aware a lot of these young kids that were very, very rabidly in support of Trump, they did not know, okay? But they didn't vote for him a second time, and I know that because he didn't win. Like I told him on Twitter, he didn't win, and he didn't win because he did not implement the things that he had promised the white working poor, which were his primary voting bloc. And now it's just a bunch of old people and there's a lot less of them because of his mishandling of the whole thing that shan't be spoken of. But moving on.
He may disavow them all he likes, but Donald Trump's allure to racist is rearing its ugly head in these final days of this contentious campaign. Last night, a mob scene in New Orleans after the former KKK leader and current U.S. Senate candidate squeaked into a debate on a Black college campus. David Duke is one of Donald Trump's biggest and least welcomed fans in Louisiana. Duke is barely getting 5% in the polls, but it was enough to get him on a debate stage and voice his admiration for Donald Trump.
Now, I want you to understand, David Duke is not some crazy nobody. David Duke renounced his association with the Ku Klux Klan like 40 years ago or something. He is a respected Republican politician in Louisiana. He did a great job as a representative in Louisiana. And on top of that, he has run for other offices like other Republicans have. He's run for president. He's run for governor of Louisiana. He is a respectable and normal politician, and I guess what makes David Duke abnormal is the fact that David Duke has morality. David Duke has self-respect and respect for other people, And he's different in that respect. He's not your typical politician in the fact that David Duke is a genuinely decent and good person. And I'm going to show that later.
Here, I will be Donald Trump's most loyal advocate to make sure his nominees go to the Supreme Court.
Mark Potok with the Southern Poverty Law Center says racist groups of the past have gotten new life.
Now, keep in mind, the SPLC has been investigated by people for its own racism, but moving forward.
Like it or not, from Trump.
I think from the point of view of the radical right, Donald Trump has been playing a careful little game of footsie with them since the very beginning of the campaign. I think they feel clearly that Trump is essentially on their side, if not precisely holding the same views.
It's been an ongoing problem for Trump, stumbling over questions on how to handle support from known racists.
Well, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? I don't know anything about what you're even talking about with white supremacy or white supremacists. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know, did he endorse me or what's going on? Because, you know, I know nothing about David Duke. I know nothing about white supremacists. And so you're asking me a question that I'm supposed to be talking about people that I know nothing about.
But I guess the question from the Anti-Defamation League is, even if you don't know about their endorsement, there are these groups and individuals endorsing you. Would you just say unequivocally you condemn them and you don't want their support?
Well, I have to look at the group.
Trump did eventually go on to disavow Duke, but he's been walking a thin line ever since.
We're going to watch Pennsylvania. Go down to certain areas and watch and study and make sure other people don't come in and vote.
Now, this is the thing that you have to understand. See, he was talking about a rigged election up until the point that he won the last time. Everything was rigged, everything was rigged, everything was rigged. He had that planned out. It was premeditated in case he lost. Okay? But the thing is, what you also have to understand about Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania is a blue dog Democrat state. Okay? David Duke is your traditional Dixiecrat. He ran as a Democrat first and then converted over to Republican in the 90s when he realized that the Democratic Party had changed. And honestly, in my opinion, it's the other way around now. I think it's time for conservatives to start recognizing who the pro-America Party is, and it is not the Republican Party at this point.
Sure other people don't come in and vote 5 times.
His recent calls for poll watchers to protest against rigged elections has led to charges of racism because of the focus on inner-city polling places. And his campaign has gotten support in the form of robocalls. Last week, it was a robocall in Utah which labeled a third-party Trump opponent as a homosexual. Earlier this year, white nationalist robocalls went out in New Hampshire saying vote for Trump to keep Muslims out and illegal immigrants deported. Jared Taylor, who calls himself a white advocate, told CNN Donald Trump may not like him, but he likes what Trump says.
Do you think that Donald Trump wants your support?
I don't know whether he wants it or not. I think he wants support from everyone. Whether or not he would agree with me is an entirely other matter. Remember, it is I who am supporting Donald Trump, not Donald Trump who's supporting me.
Now, what you need to understand is Dr. David Duke, PhD, he holds a PhD in history, and he is a specialist in understanding and explaining the role of communism and the detriment that communism has played in fiddling with the power structures of various countries in the world. David Duke is not only a respected politician and a successful politician, a formerly successful politician, but he is also a respected academic speaker. He's spoken throughout the Ukraine, Russia, the Middle East. He attended a meeting that was put on by Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in Iran. I mean, the guy is a respected academic, a respected politician. They can try and say these things about him, but I will show how that's wrong, and I will show how Donald Trump, instead of taking the endorsement of, and I would go so far as to say David Duke is an anti-racist. I would go that far, as because David Duke's organization and David Duke himself really only want fair treatment for everyone, regardless of their race or their religion, etc. And I would actually go so far as to say David Duke is an anti-racist and that Donald Trump turn down the support of an anti-racist.
Grand Wizard of the Klan won a seat in the Louisiana legislature.
David Duke has been trying to shed his image as a cross-burning Klansman for almost 10 years now. He's still having difficulty doing that with a lot of people.
This is not the issue of this campaign. It's not a Jewish Christian issue or controversy. It's not a black-white controversy. I'm an individual standing up for equal rights for everybody.
He did persuade a little more than half.
I'm an individual standing up for equal rights for everybody. I'm an individual standing up for equal rights for everybody.
He did persuade a little more than half of the voters who went to the polls this weekend that he should be elected to the Louisiana legislature. Political analysts say there are several reasons why Duke won. First of all, he was a better campaigner than his opponent. And second, he was saying what a lot of voters wanted to hear, that whites should have rights as well as minorities. When whites should have rights as well as minorities. Whites should have rights as well as minorities. Whites should have rights as well as minorities.
Keep in mind that it has been, and now you see the apex of this, where they're trying to make it seem like you're racist if you're white. That's the whole basis, and that if you're white, you do not deserve equal treatment under the law. I'm happy to see that the Central Park Karen, as she's called, finally wrote an article explaining what had happened. Those of us that were paying attention knew what happened, but nobody else did. And it's very important that people understand that there are white people that have essentially become the prey of minorities. They've become the prey in a number of ways. A lot of these fake hate crimes and, things like that, which is exactly what the Central Park Karen thing was. If you listen to her side of it, she went to the park at a time when the dog was allowed off the leash. The gentleman that claimed to be afraid of the dog lured the dog toward him with dog treats. There were news stories at the time that there were poisoned dogs. People were saying that their dogs were poisoned. And this man allegedly had lured other dogs to him, this man that was so terrified of dogs. Okay? So the point that I would like to make is you need to understand that, yes, whites have rights as well as minorities. That's not a crazy thing to say, and that does not make somebody a racist.
Whites should have rights as well as minorities. Whites should have rights as well as minorities. When Duke left the Klan, he founded the National Association for the Advancement of White People.
It's not a question of being against minorities at all. It's simply a question of making sure that our rights are also protected. Therefore, we're going to have civil making sure that our rights are also protected. Therefore, making sure that our rights are also protected. Therefore, making sure that our rights are also protected. Therefore, we're going to have civil rights in America. We must have civil rights for everyone and not a chosen few.
David Duke has been repudiated by his party, vilified by his opponents, exposed as a racist in this TV commercial.
My victory. My victory.
And yet a large number of voters support Duke in his race
Now,
against...
what's funny? David Duke renounced the Ku Klux Klan. There are other politicians that have been in the Ku Klux Klan, like Robert Byrd. Robert Byrd was accepted, and people didn't care. He renounced the Ku Klux Klan, and he was accepted. David Duke renounces the Ku Klux Klan, and every time he's on a news story, he is introduced as the former imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. Okay? He is a former representative of Louisiana. He is a PhD in history. He is a specialist on the history of communism. He is a lot of things other than the former imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, which he denounced. He already did that, but people do not accept that. Okay, and the reason why is because he has taken a pro-America, pro-American line. He is pro-American, and the media and other people do not like people that are pro-American. That's also why, if you look with Ilhan Omar, okay, Ilhan Omar certainly cannot be accused of being a white supremacist. She's a Sudanese woman, okay? So what happened with Ilhan Omar is they accused her of being a racist because she had stated what I don't even think was a racist comment, but I won't repeat it. It was she said something, it's all about the Benjamins. I don't know it verbatim, but she said something like all about the Benjamins on Twitter, and that turned into a supposed anti-Semitic statement. Now, what's funny is she supported Bernie Sanders, a Jewish man, for the presidency after that. So I don't know why people think she's anti-Semitic. Now, that being said, I would say that Trump's comment that she should, quote, go home is a ferociously racist and anti-American statement made by a sitting president. But nobody seems to care about that.
The incumbent Democrat, J. Bennett Johnston, who calls Duke a lying racist. Duke, who campaigns against affirmative action and welfare mothers, claims
Now, what's funny, when Duke was on the O'Reilly factor or the no spin zone or whatever horseshit O'Reilly was doing at the time, Bill O'Reilly claimed that he did not know what European American history was. Now, Bill O'Reilly wrote a book called Culture Warrior, okay? Now, in that book, Bill O'Reilly talked about the importance of keeping the United States, in his opinion, not my opinion, majority white. And how if we didn't keep it majority white, test scores would go down and, the country would become less conservative and less conservative and less conservative, and we would lose our European cultural heritage, our European American cultural heritage. However, when David Duke is on O'Reilly, O'Reilly magically had no clue what he was talking about. Okay, so that's the thing, that you got to watch these people because they are paid adversaries of America. Bill O'Reilly is a paid adversary of America. He is against America, and he is against those that stand in favor of America, like Dr. David Duke.
Johnston was once a segregationist.
He still seems to be for racial discrimination. Only now it's against whites instead of blacks.
The polls indicate Johnston is clearly the frontrunner in this race, but the polls have notoriously underestimated David Duke before. He's expected to get a lot of votes Saturday, and if he does lose, the message of his campaign will linger long after the election.
Former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke is officially running for the governor of Louisiana. Shunned by fellow Republicans and turned down by voters in the last election, Duke still predicts victory this fall. Gary Mattingly of WDSU reports.
David Duke is not letting his controversial past stop him from getting to the governor's mansion. The state representative from suburban New Orleans is the latest in a field of candidates trying to win that post. Duke tried unsuccessfully to get into the U.S. Senate, but his showing was impressive, getting more than 40% of the vote. This time, Duke says he's more confident the votes will be there to take him over the top.
I can guarantee you that the Republican vote will not be split. I'll receive 85% of the Republican vote in this election, plus a great percentage of the Democratic vote.
Once again, Duke will have to contend with the groups trying to block his candidacy. Reverend James Stovall is with the Louisiana Coalition Against Racism and Nazism.
We think that the image of David Duke is such that he will not get the vote again that he did once before.
In truth, I'm a simple man and quite unremarkable in my talents. Yet I'm smart enough to recognize the harsh realities and maybe dumb enough to verbalize that understanding out loud.
Now that's the problem I'm running into. When you're dumb enough to verbalize what's going on, you get canceled.
Realities, and maybe dumb enough to verbalize realities, and maybe dumb enough to verbalize realities, and maybe dumb enough to verbalize that understanding out loud. Every political rule I break, but I'm not broken.
While Duke failed in his attempt to make it to the U.S. Senate, this time he feels his chances are very good for making it to the governor's mansion.
So you might be asking yourself, obviously, Dr. David Duke, Ph.D., supported Donald Trump. Well, how does Donald Trump repay those that support him? Well, we know that Cohen is a good example, how he's tried to destroy Cohen and other people. But how did he repay David Duke?
Eric wants voters to know he finds Trump supporter and former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard David Duke disgusting. Apparently so much so that he agreed with a talk radio host who said Duke deserves a bullet in the head.
Now, mind you, I cannot say this enough. This is a gentleman who has access to firearms. He is a big game hunter, stating that he believes a person running for a GOP spot in Louisiana deserves a, quote, and I'm not saying this, this is what Eric Trump said, deserves a bullet in the head. This is what he's saying. A gentleman with access, this is from the same guy whose father tried to take away the firearms of law-abiding Americans with red flag laws. Okay? Same guy. Okay? Saying that he thinks that a person running for the Republican ticket in Louisiana for senator that has ardently supported his father essentially deserves a, quote, bullet in the head. That's what Eric Trump said. This is how insane these people are.
Said Duke deserves a bullet in the head.
If I said exactly what you said, I'd get killed for it, but I think I'll say it anyway. The guy does deserve a bullet. I mean, I think I'll say it anyway. The guy does deserve a bullet. I think I'll say it anyway. The guy does deserve a bullet. I mean, I think I'll say it anyway. The guy does deserve a bullet. I mean.
So the only crime that David Duke committed was trying to hold Eric Trump's father accountable for the false promises he made to the white working poor of this country.
What does today represent to you? The camera's right here. What does today represent to you?
How you doing? This represents a turning point for the people of this country. We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take our country back, and that's what we got to do.
Now ask yourself, if you voted for Donald Trump, do you feel America is more like America? Or do you think it's less? I would say actually under Biden, our country has become more like the America that many of us grew up in, the prosperous Bill Clinton era, George H.W. Bush era America, when people had spare money and felt comfortable and safe in their local communities and things like that. I do not feel safe in this, which is the result of Donald Trump's America. This, which is the result of Donald Trump letting tens of thousands of violent criminals out of prison. Nobody should feel safe. Nobody should feel safe. And he should not be rewarded with a second term. So, this is David Duke defending George Zimmerman from the ridiculous amounts of death threats and hate that he received essentially for defending himself. That's been proven in a court of law. Okay? However, in Donald Trump's America, he probably would have been found guilty because Donald Trump had taken a hard line to support criminals. Okay? We know that with how he kowtowed to the criminal community when George Floyd died during an arrest. Donald Trump passed laws to punish the police, make it harder for the police to enforce the law, and also he made it illegal for police to use certain maneuvers to protect themselves and to protect the public. Okay? And that's a big issue, you know. Donald Trump is the most, in the history of this country, the most pro-crime president we have ever had. But let's hear what David Duke has to say regarding George Zimmerman, and you will see this is not racism. This is not him saying anybody is this way or that way. He, again, denounced the Klan over 40 freaking years ago, and people are trying to make it appear otherwise.
Support his posting a picture of anybody that's dead that he shot. That's not good for the family. It's not good for anybody. But I do understand how the man's getting kind of frustrated. He's been shot at. They've tried to kill him. He's been found innocent in a court of law. And I certainly, the whole thing to me is nothing more what's going on right now in this country. What went on with the Trayvon Martin case is a perfect example of the racism in the mass media against, a perfect example of the racism in the mass media, a perfect example of the racism in the mass media against European Americans. The only reason this was a huge case in the United States of America because it was a person called a white man who shot a black man.
Now I want you to understand this. This is very important that you understand this. George Zimmerman was not white. George Zimmerman was Jewish and Hispanic, had black family members, volunteered with at-risk black youth. There was nothing. I don't even think the guy was conservative, probably. He sounded to me like a liberal. He was a Hispanic Jewish gentleman that volunteered with at-risk black youths. Does that sound like a conservative? Moving forward. Now, for those that remember, they might remember Tila Katila, Richard Spencer, and these other young well, I don't even want to call them conservatives, young American nationalists. Okay, now Tila Katila is certainly not a white woman, but the thing that you need to understand is these are active, vivacious, go-getting, young American nationalists. These are the people that supported Trump, okay? And these are the people that did not support Trump in 2020 because he betrayed them, and they will not support Trump again in 2024 with any luck. Okay, so let's move forward.
This shocking video has emerged of a meeting of far-right wingers in Washington.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
Now keep in mind, this is the mindset of the people that voted Trump. These are the same people that Trump said that he is going to round up and eliminate during a speech. Remember, he included fascists. He said communists, liberals, and fascists. This is why you need to support freedom of speech for everyone, even people you don't like. Because what happens is you can get a crazy person in there, like Donald Trump, that has already said that he's going to use his attorney general to find reasons to imprison people that ran against him. Okay? So what you have to understand is you need to support freedom of speech for everybody. You need to support freedom of speech for communists, for white supremacists, black supremacists, Mexican supremacists, everybody. Everybody now you draw the line when they start threatening people, but you need to support freedom of speech for 100% of the population, so long as nobody else's rights are being violated and nobody is being encouraged to commit acts of violence.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
Some gave Nazi-style salutes. And at a restaurant, troubled reality TV star Tila Tequila gave the Nazi salute with these knuckleheads.
Now, what's humorous is I had no clue who the hell Tila Katila was prior to this, though I don't really watch TV, but still, I had no idea who this chick was. And then, as you can tell, if you compare what's going on with Tila Katila to, say, Adrasdia/Mary, you can see that Tila Katila has been gang-stalked into submission for her going against the grain attitudes.
Tequila gave the Nazi salute with these knuckleheads. She even tweeted Sieg Heil, Hail Victory, but she misspelled Sieg. Hey, nobody said she was smart. The Trump transition team condemned the meeting. President-elect Trump has continued to denounce racism of any kind, and he was elected because he will be a leader for every American.
Now, he did not denounce racism of every kind, and I'm going to show that later. He accepts and supports black supremacy and Zionism. These are two factors that keep coming up with Trump. His support of black supremacy and black nationalism, as well as his support for Zionism and harming people that are not Jewish. These are the two things that keep coming up that Trump supports. So no, he did not renounce racism or denounce racism of any kind. He supports very specific types of racism.
And it's being reported that Trump will not pursue a prosecution of Hillary Clinton in the new administration. Trump is heading to his Florida retreat, Mar-a-Lago, today for Thanksgiving. And those sanitation trucks forming a barricade around Trump Tower will be redeployed to protect the Thanksgiving Day parade from any potential terror threats.
So once more, I want to be very clear that the only reason Donald Trump won in 2016 was the support of people that proudly and openly called themselves fascists, National Socialists, Nazis, and paleoconservatives. These people are the reason he won, okay? And now he wishes to silence them and eliminate them. Keep that in mind. This is how Donald Trump repays the people that support him, as you can see with Dr. Duke.
Now at 11, hailing Trump. Tonight, video of a room full of people raising their arms Nazi style, shot by the Atlantic magazine. Tonight, the Trump transition team released a statement denouncing racism of any kind.
The president-elect also releasing a video of himself detailing his agenda for his first 100 days in the White House. CBS 4 anchor Elliot Rodriguez.
So these people ardently supported Trump while Trump ardently denounced them and supported enemies of America. Period. He supports the enemies of America. And people ardently and feverishly supported him because everybody thought he was bullshitting, and once he got in, he would do the right thing, which is support civil nationalism, support an America First agenda. He supported an America Last agenda and an Israel First agenda.
Is in the control room now with more on the story. Elliot.
Well, Rick and Rutabe, a controversial white nationalist group, feels empowered by the election of Donald Trump, and they're not afraid to show it. At their Washington gathering, you could see these are neo-Nazis exulting in what they believe is newfound acceptance.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
The audience offered cheers and applause in addition to Nazi-style salutes at the annual conference of the National Policy Institute, part of the alt-right movement and fans of President-elect Donald Trump. Since 2008, the alt-right movement has lived mostly online, but it's gained attention since the Trump campaign brought in Stephen Bannon, the former CEO of Breitbart News, a website that supports white nationalists and anti-Semites.
I'm enthusiastic.
Breitbart News, honestly, if you want to know the truth, Breitbart News is a fervently Zionist publication. What I always thought was humorous is you had people with that Milo Yinnabalabalabbalist guy supporting him. Now, take this in mind. He's a homosexual, an open homosexual. He's married to a black man or with a black man, okay? He is supposedly Catholic, and he's supposedly Jewish. You can only be, and he's supposedly a white nationalist. You can only be one of those things at a time, okay? But the morons that continued, and probably still continue to support Trump, thought the world of Milo Yiannopoulos and thought that he was the end-all, be-all, and he writes for Breitbart. So when you have a person like Milo Yiannopoulos that's writing for Breitbart, you have to question the reality and the sincerity of what's being said, because there's probably not a whole bunch of sincerity there.
About Stephen Bannon acting as the strategist for Donald Trump, because Breitbart has been an open place for a lot of ideas that I care about.
Spencer's group was met with protests on the streets of Washington. Friday night, some attendees and reality star Tila Tequila posed for this picture, giving a Nazi-style salute. The restaurant where the picture was taken posting an apology condemning the act and saying...
Now, this is the thing. What kind of world do we live in where a restaurant has to apologize for the behavior of the individuals attending a thing that they paid to attend? This is absolutely ridiculous. But that's the world we live in. This is the world we live in now, okay? And Trump did nothing to reverse that. In fact, we're worse now. The only person that's done anything to reinstate some semblance of normalcy is Joe Biden.
It was not aware the group would be dining in their establishment. Asked about the alt-right group, a Trump spokesman said, President-elect Trump has continued to denounce racism of any kind. And the spokesman said, President-elect Trump has continued to denounce racism of any kind.
Now remember, racism is code word for white. That should be more correctly translated from Trumpanese to English as President Trump has continued to denounce white people of any kind. That would be far more accurate.
And he was elected because he will be a leader for every American. To think otherwise is a complete misrepresentation of the movement.
Was he a leader for every American? Do you feel better off since the Trump administration? Did Trump accomplish the goals that you thought he would accomplish? Are you doing better now because of Trump? Or are you doing worse now because of Trump? Or did Trump do nothing for you? These are questions that people need to ask themselves.
United Americans from all backgrounds.
My agenda will be based on a simple core principle: putting America first.
The president-elect released a video outlining his first 100 days in office.
Whether it's producing steel, building cars, or curing disease, I want the next generation of production and innovation to happen right here.
And we continued to lose jobs, and we continued to go down and go down and go down. That's the truth.
On our great homeland, America.
Well, tonight, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum compared the comments of the alt-right movement to Nazi Germany, calling on all
So this is what you have to understand. The people that supported Donald Trump, that were responsible for him getting elected, were people with views that are exactly the views that of the people that Donald Trump wants to round up and eliminate according to Donald Trump. The people that supported him are people that he wants to do away with.
Comments of the alt-right movement to Nazi Germany, calling on all Americans to confront racist thinking and divisive.
Now, what's funny, remember I said racism is code word for what? White people. Now, when Donald Trump was in office, his head of the Department of Homeland Security declared white racism to be, quote, on par with ISIS and the #1 security risk to the United States of America, despite the fact that Black Lives Matter had already began setting pretty much every major U.S. city on fire, attacked a number of federal courthouses, and essentially declared sedition and war on the United States. In fact, if you remember the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, you literally had a group of BLM that did commit an act of sedition and an act of treason. Well, you had treason everywhere moving forward. Now, the exact second I stopped supporting Donald Trump, period. I tolerated a lot of his bullshit, okay? The exact second I stopped supporting him at all, I stopped publicly supporting him for a while, but when I knew he was going to be probably the worst president in history was when he went against his campaign promise. Remember, he promised to get us the hell out of the wars in the Middle East, okay? And what he did is he attacked the sovereign nation of Syria, okay? He attacked Syria after he promised not to attack Syria, to remove us from these wars in the Middle East. He goddamn near caused World War III by attacking Syria. He also goddamn near caused World War III with the bullshit he pulled with Kim Jong-un with my buttons bigger and all that bullshit, okay? So this is a man that is completely mentally, emotionally, and physically not healthy enough to hold the office of the presidency. He is a goddamned lunatic that attacked Syria after promising again and again and again and again he wouldn't attack Syria. Now, he claims that he attacked Syria because his daughter Ivanka cried. Ann Coulter, one of my favorite conservative columnists and authors, stated that she used to joke that Ivanka cried and people died because that's how stupid Trump was, okay? Nobody's blaming Trump about being smart. None of us were. None of us that were actually conservatives, true conservatives, were actually saying he was smart. None of us believed he was smart. None of us even really believed he was a conservative. We voted for this moron because we thought he would implement the things needed to reestablish America as an American country, to naturalize the people that were already here, and to promote a sense of civil nationalism that would encourage a unified America. And all he did from the second he took office was rip America apart and try and pit this group against that group, against that group, against that group, which is how he won the White House, honestly. And that is not the behavior of a decent president. nor is it the behavior of a decent president to attack a country that is of no threat to the United States whatsoever for no reason after continually promising not to attack them. And goddamn near starting World War III, because remember, who's allied with Syria? The Ruskies.
My fellow Americans, on Tuesday, Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad launched a horrible chemical weapons attack on innocent...
Now, I want to remind you, he's saying that he launched a horrible chemical weapons attack on innocent people. There has never been any proof that that actually happened. Another thing that Bashar al-Assad actually said himself, which makes a hell of a lot of sense, is, okay, so the government deploys emergency services after the attack to help the people, and the EMTs, now Bashar al-Assad is an ophthalmologist. He's a doctor. He's a physician. So what his point was, if the chemicals that they're claiming were used, how are these EMTs handling these victims with bare hands and without respirators and things like that? And like Bashar al-Assad said as a joke, are these magical EMTs? Are they wizards of some sort? I remember it very well because I was very, very, very much opposed to anything going on with Syria. In fact, I was one of the few people, I'm a firm believer that maybe, just maybe, you might want to bring in at least Syrian refugees into the United States because of the bullshit going on over there, okay? Because of the destabilization in the region. Moving forward.
Civilians using a deadly nerve agent.
No proof.
Assad choked out the lives of helpless men, women, and children. It was a slow and brutal death for so many. Even beautiful babies were cruelly murdered.
Now, what's funny, I don't hear him saying about the beautiful Palestinian babies that were being murdered at the same time by Israelis, or the beautiful Palestinian babies that are being murdered by Israel at the very moment. You don't hear anything about the beautiful Palestinian babies, only the beautiful Syrian babies to justify an attack on Syria. Might I also point out that the real reason for this attack, at least from what I know from watching the news at the time, was because the Syrian military had shot down an Israeli plane that was illegally in Syrian airspace. That's my thought as to why it probably happened. But then again, I don't know. Maybe it was because Ivanka is really good at manipulating her father and she was his advisor. I really don't know.
This very barbaric attack. No child of God should ever suffer such harm.
Again, no child of God, no child of God. But yet, it's okay for Israel to do what Israel does to the Lebanese and the Palestinians and pretty much everyone else that they don't like.
Tonight I ordered a targeted military strike on the airfield in Syria from where the chemical attack was launched. It is in this vital national security interest of the United States to...
This is in absolutely no interest of the United States. This is in the national security interest of Israel. That is not in the national security interest of the United States. I would strongly suggest people watch Jimmy Dore, where Jimmy Dore points right prior to 9/11 happening. Our military was very concerned about Israeli operators and the potential for Israel to, maybe, just maybe do something to us, the United States. Kind of like the USS Liberty attack or the Lavon affair or the Jonathan Pollard thing or the murder of Rachel Corrie. Little things like that. Like, maybe how Israel has attacked us in the past.
Prevent and deter the spread and use of deadly chemical weapons. There can be no dispute that Syria...
Okay, I can't stomach this any longer. This is why I stopped supporting the asshole.
Obligations.
If I wait, it's going to take... This video will be 16 hours long if I wait for him to finish his sentence. So, Donald Trump doesn't like... Syria. But what he does like is Saudi Arabia. Now, before Tulsi Gabbard sold out to the Israelis recently, she was an ardent, she didn't want Syria to be attacked. It made no sense. She even met with Bashar al-Assad and all that bullshit. The point is that Donald Trump did cozy up to one group of people in particular, and that group of people was the Saudis.
President Trump's recent approval for U.S. companies to sell nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia is both mind-blowing and inexplicable.
It's an insane threat to the security of the United States. So he's not concerned about Saudi Arabia having our technology, but yet he's concerned about Bashar al-Assad doing something that he probably didn't even do, and for which emergency services were deployed and all that bullshit. He's concerned about that, but he's not concerned about an enemy of the United States. Saudi Arabia creates these anti-American mosques all over Europe promoting anti-Americanism, and that doesn't faze Trump in snuggling up to the Saudi regime. The Saudi
President Trump's recent approval for U.S. companies to sell nuclear technology to Saudi Arabia is both mind-blowing and inexplicable. Saudi Arabia is the world's primary exporter of jihadist ideology. Exporter of jihadist ideology. Wahhabi Salafist ideology that is the motivation and inspiration for terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, groups that the Saudis both directly and indirectly support. So President Trump needs to answer this question. How does it serve our interests to help Saudi Arabia develop nuclear weapons? How does it serve our countries develop nuclear weapons?
Now keep this in mind, this is a guy that wanted to tear up the Iran nuclear deal, which allowed us to go in and investigate and make sure Iran was only using enrichment of whatever for, energy purposes, but yet he has no problem giving this technology to the Saudi Arabians.
Develop nuclear weapons. How does it serve help Saudi Arabia develop nuclear weapons? Help Saudi Arabia develop nuclear weapons. Why? How does it serve our country's interests to help Saudi Arabia develop nuclear weapons? It doesn't. After a Saudi lieutenant carried out a terrorist attack in Pensacola that killed 3 service members and left 8 others injured, why is the President of the United States and his Secretary of State acting as the spokesperson for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? It is an absolute disgrace and shameful that the office of the Presidency of the United States is being used to further the interests of the theocratic, extremist Saudi Arabian kingdom, the #1 exporter and proponent of this radical Islamist ideology that fuels jihadists like Al-Qaeda and ISIS.
Now, we know very well why he was acting as the spokesperson for Saudi Arabia, and Chris Christie's going to answer that for us.
From this family is breathtaking. It's breathtaking. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner walk out of the White House and months later get $2 billion from the Saudis? $2 billion from the Saudis. You think it's because he's some kind of investing genius? Or do you think it's because he was sitting next to the President of the United States for 4 years doing favors for the Saudis? That's your money. That's your money he stole. And gave it to his family. You know what that makes us? A banana republic. That's what it makes us. The grift from this family is breathtaking. It's breathtaking. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner walk out of the White House and months later get $2 billion from the Saudis? $2 billion from the Saudis. You think it's because he's some kind of investing genius? Or do you think it's because he was sitting next to the President of the United States for 4 years doing favors for the Saudis? That's your money. That's your money he stole. And gave it to his family. You know what that makes us? A banana republic. That's what it makes us. The grift from this family is breathtaking. It's breathtaking. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Kushner walk out of the White House and months later get $2 billion from the Saudis? $2 billion from the Saudis. You think it's because he's some kind of investing genius? Or do you think it's because he was sitting next to the President of the United States for 4 years doing favors for the Saudis? That's your money. That's your money he stole. And gave it to his family. You know what that makes us? A banana republic.